Hi and welcome to the 75 guys and the one girl watching this YouTube channel. In this video, I'm doing a rebuild of my 5-inch quad. My friends at Caddx sent me the Walksnail Goggles X and the Moonlight kit, mainly for use on my TikTok channel, but I thought I'd make a video showing how I replaced the DJI O3 unit with the Moonlight kit. Since I pretty much have to take the entire quad apart to do this, I'm also making some improvements and changes to the drone that I've seen can help with performance and reduce gyro noise overall. There are already plenty of reviews and videos about the Goggles X and the Moonlight kit on YouTube, so I'm not going to do a deep dive here. But at the end of the video, I'll share some of my experiences with the setup so far. The goggles come in a nice box and they include a cable for the battery, but the battery itself is not included. I'll be using a 4S battery. The Moonlight kit has a 19.6mm wide camera, so it should fit right into the apex frame I'm using. Also, unlike the DJI O3, it comes with dual antennas, so I'll need to find and print a suitable TPU mount for it. I'm starting by removing the top plate. Since the wire to the O3 unit runs underneath the ESC, I'll need to remove both the flight controller and desolder the motor wires to take out the ESC. I'll also have to desolder the GPS, the buzzer, and the receiver. I'm also planning to move one of the ELRS antennas and mount it vertically at the front of the drone. When I first built the drone, I used lead-free solder, which requires quite a lot of heat. One trick is to apply a bit of fresh solder that makes it easier to desolder the wires. What I want to do now is clean up the ESC. Here in Norway, we mostly only have access to lead-free solder, but I managed to get my hands on a batch of leaded solder from eBay, which I'll be using. So I'm going to remove the old solder and get the ESC nice and tidy. Good tools for that are flux and a desoldering strip. Finally, I clean it with IPA and a toothbrush to remove any leftover flux residue. And after a good scrub, it came out really nice. It almost looks brand new. Now it's time for the camera and the VTX. I'm trying to be careful with this since I'm planning to use it in another drone. First, I'm removing the screws, and then I have to work a bit to get the VTX out because I stuck it down with double-sided tape. It's holding on pretty well, so I'll have to take my time and be gentle. The O3 kit has worked really well, but I'm excited to try out the Moonlight now, especially because the O3 isn't the best in low light conditions, and judging by the name at least, the Moonlight should perform better. The Moonlight VTX unit has 4 mounting holes with 20 by 20 millimeter spacing, so I'm planning to screw it directly into the frame instead of using tape. The cable that comes with the VTX has a plug only on the end that connects to the VTX, so it needs to be soldered to the flight controller. I've heard rumors that Caddx is going to start including a cable with a DJI style plug, so you won't have to solder it. That's a good move. Since the Moonlight kit has 2 antennas, I needed a new antenna mount. I found this antenna mount for the dual antennas on the Moonlight VTX over on MakerWorld. It fits perfectly on the Apex frame, so shout out to Zoraya FPV for designing it. I'll leave a link to it in the description. To get the antennas into the TPU mount, I need to disconnect them from the VTX unit. They're a bit tricky to reach. First, you have to remove the 2 screws holding the small cable guard in place. That's what keeps the antenna wires from popping off. Once that's off, you'll need a small flathead screwdriver or a pair of tweezers to gently release the UFL connectors. As part of the rebuild, I'm also relocating the antennas for the ELRS receiver. I printed a new TPU part that lets me mount one antenna horizontally underneath the VTX antenna, and the other one will be mounted vertically between the stack and the camera. All of these things are smart to plan out before you permanently screw anything in place. I found out that reconnecting the antenna wires was even harder than removing them, so the best way to do it is to plug them in before mounting the antenna holder to the frame. It's really difficult to line them up correctly and push them into place at the same time. I'm thinking it might have been better if the connectors were on top of the unit instead of in the middle, like many others VTXs have. The 20 by 20 mounting holes fit perfectly in the Apex frame, but the screws are just a bit too long, so I'm using some nylon nuts I had lying around as spacers in between the frame and the screw head. Alright, so now that the ELRS antenna, the VTX unit, and the radio receiver are all properly mounted, it's finally time to get the ESC back in place and start soldering the motor wires again. But before I do that, I make sure all the wires that need to go under the ESC are laying nice and tidy. Previously, I had the motor wires running over the ESC behind the stack screw and then back out again. This time I'm trying a new method I've seen, where I lay them on top of each other sideways. This is a good time to check for any shorts before soldering the flight controller back in. And yeah, don't forget to use a smoke stopper. Nice, that's the sound I like to hear, so I can move on. This way, if the smoke stopper goes off later, I'll know it's not because of the motors or the ESC. Remember to plug the cable from the ESC back into the flight controller. This one's really important to get right. If it's not seated properly, you might run into issues where one or more of the motors won't spin. I was actually planning to film some close-up shots of the soldering on the flight controller, but I totally forgot. If you're interested in that, you can check out the original build video I made when I first built this drone. Everything's the same. The only difference, like I mentioned earlier, is that the cable from the Moonlight VTX doesn't have a plug, so you'll need to solder it directly to the flight controller. But it's the same principle as everything else. TX from the VTX goes to RX on the flight controller and the other way around. The only thing you really need to make sure of is that the red power wire goes to a pad that can actually deliver enough voltage. On the Speedy BFC I'm using, that's clearly marked as 9 volt, which is the same as the DJI plug uses. Now everything's soldered up, and I'm doing one final check with the smoke stopper to make sure everything looks good. I'm also turning on my radio controller just to make sure it connects like it's supposed to.
Welcome to Edge TX. Disarm. Acro mode. Telemetry connected.
The rebuild is pretty much done now, and I'm honestly really happy with how it turned out. I always try to build my quads as clean as possible, with tidy cable management, and I do my best to avoid having wires crisscrossing over the flight controller. Before I screw the top plate back on, I want to make sure everything works with the FPV system. So I bind the VTX to the goggles and check that I'm getting video just like expected. To bind the Moonlight kit with the goggles, just press the link button on the VTX. LED should turn solid red. Then also press the link button on the goggles. It should start beeping slowly. It should only take a few seconds to bind. After the pairing is successful, the LED on the VTX should turn solid green and the goggles beeping should stop. You should get an image in the goggles. Finally, I mount the camera and screw the top plate back on. The camera uses the same mount as the DJI O3 camera, which is super convenient. The Moonlight also comes with an ND filter. It's an ND8. I'm also waiting on an ND16 for those brighter days with a bit more light. On my first few flights with the Walksnail goggles and the Moonlight kit, the amount of fisheye effect in the goggles felt a bit weird at first, but it didn't take long before I got used to it. The goggles also fit my face pretty well, especially as the foam started to mold to my face shape. I tested the Moonlight kit one evening just before sunset, and I felt like the results were actually pretty good. Thanks for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you liked what you saw. You'll find links to all the products down in the video description. Until next time, fly safe and have fun out there.